The night of the feast was supposed to be full of joy. The alien village gathered around long wooden tables, filled with roasted meats, glowing fruits, and steaming bowls of soup. Children laughed, elders sang, and the air was heavy with the scent of food. Among the crowd sat two children, brother and sister, their small hands clutching each other's tightly. Their stepfather had ordered them to behave, to eat only a little, but the sight of so much food after weeks of hunger made their hearts beat fast. They were small, thin, and always starving. The boy whispered to his sister, "Just a little more. No one will notice." But soon their plates were full again, and again. The stepfather's eyes narrowed. He noticed every bite, every handful. His jaw tightened like stone. The children laughed softly, unaware of the storm building in his heart. By the time the feast ended, his rage was boiling. When they returned home, the shouting began. His voice was sharp, cutting the night. "You greedy little beasts, all you do is eat and drain me dry." His words struck harder than any blow. The little girl cried, hiding behind her brother. The boy tried to defend her. "We were hungry, we didn't mean—" But the man silenced him with a raised hand. "You are not worth the food you swallow," the stepfather spat. "Your mother left you to me, but I will not waste my life on useless mouths." His words made the children tremble. Then came the cruel decision. He grabbed a sack, tossed in his own belongings, and turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" the boy asked, his voice shaking. "Leaving," the man growled. "Find your own food, find your own home. From this night you are nothing to me." The door slammed. The sound echoed through the small, cracked house. The children stood frozen, their breaths sharp in the cold air. The little girl clutched her brother's sleeve, tears running down her pale cheeks. "Why did he leave us?" she whispered. The boy had no answer. He only wrapped his arms around her and held her as tightly as he could. Outside, the night grew colder. Stars burned distant and uncaring. The village lights dimmed as people returned to their homes, but no one came to check on the two abandoned children. Days passed in silence. The siblings survived on scraps, a crust of bread stolen, a fruit begged from the edge of the market, but hunger gnawed deeper every night. Their stepfather's words haunted them, useless mouths. The little girl began to believe it. She whispered to her brother one night, "Maybe we are cursed, maybe no one wants us." The boy shook his head, forcing strength into his voice. "No. We will survive, I promise." But promises could not fill empty stomachs. Their small bodies grew weaker, their voices softer. They sat huddled in the corner of the ruined house, too tired even to cry. And then, one night, a shadow fell across their door. A tall figure stood in the moonlight, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a heavy cloak. He carried a small lantern that glowed warmly in the darkness. The boy's heart raced. Was it the stepfather returning? He grabbed his sister's hand and waited. The figure stepped closer, and the light revealed something strange. His face was not like the villagers. His skin was different, his eyes deep and human. The man's voice was calm, though tired. "Why are you sitting out here in the cold?" he asked. The boy hesitated, then spoke. "Because we have no father anymore." His words broke something inside him. His voice cracked. The human knelt, setting down the lantern. His eyes softened when he saw the children's hollow cheeks. And trembling hands, he opened his satchel and pulled out a piece of bread, breaking it in half. "Eat," he said simply. The little girl stared at him wide-eyed. Why would you help us?" The man smiled faintly, though sorrow touched his face. "Because no child should sit hungry in the dark." The children ate, their hands shaking as they held the bread. The taste filled their mouths with warmth they had forgotten. Tears streamed down their faces, but for the first time since that cruel night they felt a spark of hope. The human sat with them until the stars faded, and the first light of dawn touched the village roofs. He did not leave. He did not look away. And though the children did not yet know his name, they felt something new in their hearts, something stronger than hunger. They felt safe. And somewhere deep inside, the boy thought, maybe this man is not just passing by. Maybe he is here for us. The human's name was Daniel, he told the children on the second night, his voice steady but gentle. He had wandered into their village while trading supplies, hoping to find shelter from the cold. He had not expected to stumble upon two hungry children abandoned by their own kin. The boy introduced himself as Lior, and his little sister as Nira. Their names carried the echo of a mother long gone. Daniel noticed how carefully the boy spoke, as if every word was weighed, every sound a shield for his sister. That night, Daniel built a fire outside the broken house. He stacked wood, struck sparks, and let the flames grow bright. The children huddled close, their small bodies soaking in the warmth as if they had never known it before. Daniel shared dried meat from his pouch, letting them eat until their stomachs no longer twisted in pain. For a moment, laughter returned to the siblings, soft and shy. Nira clapped her hands when the flames cracked and danced. Daniel smiled, though his heart ached at how easily their joy faded when the fire dimmed. From the shadows, villagers whispered. A few stepped closer, warning him. Do not waste your food on them. Human, they are cursed with endless hunger. One old woman spat near his feet. Their stepfather left because no man can endure their greed. Daniel looked at the children, their frightened eyes reflecting the firelight. He felt his jaw tighten. He turned back to the crowd and said firmly, Children cannot be cursed, only abandoned. The villagers muttered, some shaking their heads, others walking away, but none offered kindness, only silence and distance. When the whispers died, Daniel returned to the fire. He pulled out a blanket and wrapped it around the children. Nira leaned against his arm and whispered, You're not like the others. Daniel's chest tightened. I am just someone who refuses to walk away, he answered. That night, as the flames burned low, Lior asked softly, Will you leave too, like he did? Daniel looked into the boy's eyes. The question was not only about tonight, it was about life, about trust, about love. Daniel did not answer with promises. He only said, Not tonight. And Lior accepted that for now, the days that followed were a struggle. Daniel's supplies were not endless. He hunted in the forest nearby, caught small animals, traded odd tools with villagers for grains. Still, the hunger of the children was greater than he imagined. Nira would nibble at food even after her stomach bulged. Lior would try to hide his portion so his sister could eat more. One evening, Daniel found Lior awake, sitting by the fire alone, tears glistening in his eyes. I can't stop her from crying when she's hungry, the boy whispered. I try, but I'm not strong enough. Daniel knelt beside him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Strength is not about filling every belly, he said. It's about refusing to give up even when the world abandons you. Lior blinked at him, uncertain, but Daniel saw a flicker of hope kindle behind the sadness. But hope was tested soon. On the 5th day, the stepfather returned, his shadow long and sharp across the broken doorway. He did not come with food. He did not come with care. He came with greed. You, he sneered at Daniel. You think you can take what is mine? His eyes narrowed at the children. They belong to me, and so does the land their mother left. I will sell them both if I wish. You have no right. The children froze, terror flooding back into their eyes. Nira clung to Daniel's arm, whispering, Don't let him take us. Daniel stood, his tall frame blocking the man's path. They do not belong to you, Daniel said, his voice calm but like iron. You left them to starve. You lost every right the moment you walked away. Stepfather's lips twisted into a cruel smile. Then we'll let the elders decide, he hissed. And when they do, you'll learn that blood always wins over strangers. The villagers gathered quickly, drawn by the shouts. They wanted to see what would happen. Many smirked, expecting the human to falter, to hand the children back. But Daniel did not step aside. He put a hand on Lior's shoulder, steadying him. He whispered just loud enough for the boy to hear. I will not let him take you, I promise. The boy's chest swelled with something unfamiliar. It was not the hollow fear of before. It was courage, borrowed from the human who refused to abandon them. That night, as the fire burned bright and the stepfather plotted his next move, the children clung to Daniel as if he were their only anchor in a storm, and for the first time, they believed he truly was. The night after the stepfather's return was heavy. The children could not sleep. Every creak of the broken house made them think he was coming back to drag them away. Nira whimpered in her dreams, clutching Daniel's cloak as though it were the last safe thing in the world. Lior stayed awake, watching the door, his small fists tight. Daniel sat by the fire outside, sharpening his knife slowly, not because he wanted to fight, but because he wanted the children to feel protected. The crack of the blade against stone filled the silence, and with every sound, Lior felt a strange comfort. This man was not like their stepfather. This man did not walk away. The next day, Daniel searched for food. He set traps in the forest, climbed the rocky hills to pick wild roots, and returned with just enough to keep the children's bellies from twisting in pain. But their hunger was different. Their alien bodies burned. Energy faster. No matter how much he gave, they wanted more. At first Daniel worried. He thought they were being greedy. But when he looked into their thin faces, he saw the truth. They were not spoiled. They were desperate. Their bones showed through their skin, and still they tried to eat quietly so they would not shame him. One evening Daniel returned to find Lior crying. The boy sat alone by the dying fire, his head buried in his knees. Daniel knelt beside him. "What is it, Lior?" he asked. Softly, the boy's voice cracked. "I can't stop it. I can't stop being hungry. I can't protect Nira. I can't be strong. I'm just weak." Daniel's chest tightened. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Hunger does not make you weak. It makes you human, or alien. It makes you alive. Strength is not about hiding your hunger. It is about surviving it. Every day you stand up for your sister, every day you keep going, that is real strength." Lior lifted his head slowly, his eyes wet. But for the first time, Daniel saw a spark behind them. The boy nodded, though his voice shook. "Then I'll keep trying." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's all any of us can do." But the shadows of hunger did not fade. They followed the children everywhere. Their stomachs growled even in their sleep. Sometimes Nira would reach for food in her dreams, her tiny fingers clawing at the air. Daniel stayed awake through those nights, feeding the fire, wondering if he was enough, if he could truly give them what they needed. The villagers watched. With cold eyes, some laughed. "The human thinks he can raise alien mouths. He will learn, he will fall," they said. But Daniel ignored them. His focus was only on the children. Then came the morning when the stepfather returned again. This time he did not shout. He smiled, a cruel smile that made Lior's skin crawl. "How long will you last, human?" he asked mockingly. "They eat like beasts. Sooner or later you will drop them in the dirt like I did." Daniel did not reply. He only stood between the man and the children. His silence was stronger than any insult. But the stepfather leaned closer, his voice like poison. "You cannot fight hunger forever. When your food runs out, when your strength runs out, they will hate you too." He left laughing, but his words lingered like smoke. That night Daniel stared into the fire, his face hard. The children slept nearby, curled together under the blanket he gave them. He whispered to the flames, "I will not fail them, no matter what it takes." The next day he went deeper into the forest. Farther than the villagers ever dared, there were beasts there, creatures with glowing eyes and claws sharp as blades. But Daniel faced them, setting his traps, chasing them through the underbrush. He returned with meat heavier than he could carry, blood on his hands, sweat on his brow. The children gasped when they saw the food. Nira clapped her hands and laughed. Lior's eyes widened. You fought for us?" he asked in disbelief. Daniel set the meat down by the fire, wiping his brow. "I will fight every day if I must," he said, his voice steady. That night, as the fire burned bright and the children ate until their laughter echoed into the night, the villagers watched in silence. They whispered among themselves, confused, shaken. For the first time they wondered, maybe the human was not foolish. Maybe he was stronger than all of them, and deep inside, the children began to believe something they had never dared before. Maybe they were not cursed, maybe they were chosen. The morning was quiet, too quiet. The children played near the edge of the broken house, trying to forget the hunger and fear that had haunted them for weeks. Daniel was mending a piece of cloth into a blanket, his hands steady, his eyes calm, but inside he was alert. Something in the air felt wrong. It came with heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate. The stepfather returned, his frame broad, his eyes sharp with greed. This time he did not come alone. Behind him stood 3 villagers, men who owed him favors. Their faces were stern, their arms crossed as if they had already judged the scene before them. "Look at this," the stepfather sneered, pointing at Daniel. "The human playing house with children that are not his." His voice dripped with mockery. "You think you can replace me?" Nira froze, her small hands trembling as she clung to Lior. The boy stood in front of her, his eyes wide but unyielding. Daniel rose slowly, standing tall between the children and the men. "You left them," Daniel said quietly, but the firmness in his voice cut through the silence. "They are no longer yours." The stepfather laughed, a cruel, echoing sound. "Left? No, I gave them a chance to survive. If they were strong, they would endure. If they were weak, they would perish." He shrugged as if their lives meant nothing. "And yet here they are, alive because of me. Because of me." Daniel corrected, his voice rising. "They lived because I stayed when you abandoned them." The stepfather's grin faltered, but his arrogance returned quickly. "Then let us see what the council says," he declared. "Blood is stronger than pity, and law is stronger than your foolish kindness." The villagers behind him murmured in agreement, though not all were certain. Some glanced at the children, their eyes uneasy, but none stepped forward to help. That evening the council was gathered. The elders sat in a half-circle of stone seats, their robes heavy, their eyes cold. The stepfather spoke first, his words polished, his tone dripping with false grief. "I was forced to leave them because they were cursed, because their hunger is endless, because no man could endure their needs," he said, his hands raised as though he carried a burden too great. "But now this outsider, this human, dares to claim them. To steal what is rightfully mine," the crowd muttered, some nodding, others frowning. Daniel stepped forward, his face calm though his heart pounded. "I claim nothing," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "I only protect those who cannot protect themselves. These children are not cursed. They are innocent. They are hungry because they were left to starve. They are alone because their own blood abandoned them." His words cut like a blade. The stepfather snarled, "What do you know, human? You do not understand our ways. You do not understand our laws." Daniel took a breath, his eyes steady. "I understand this. Children deserve love, not cruelty. Family is not only blood, it is action, it is sacrifice. It is staying when the world tells you to walk away." Whispers spread through the crowd. Some scoffed, some looked thoughtful. Nira hid behind Daniel's leg, peeking out with wide eyes. Lior stood tall, trying to be brave. The head elder raised a hand, silencing the chamber. "This is unusual," he said slowly. "Our law says a guardian cannot be replaced, but it also says a guardian who abandons his duty loses his right." His gaze fell on the stepfather. "You walked away, did you not?" The stepfather's face twisted. I left them to teach them strength," he snapped, but his words rang hollow. The crowd murmured again, doubt spreading. The elder's eyes shifted to Daniel. "And you, human, why do you risk yourself for children not of your blood? What do you gain?" Daniel looked down at Nira and Lior, their fragile faces filled with hope and fear. His chest tightened. "I gain nothing," he said softly, "except the knowledge that they will not cry alone in the dark, except the chance to prove that kindness is stronger than abandonment." Silence followed, heavy and unbroken. Then the elder spoke. "We will watch. We will see if your words hold truth," he declared. "But until then, the children remain with you. The stepfather has no claim." The chamber erupted, some cheering, others protesting. The stepfather's face turned red with fury. He pointed at Daniel. "This is not over, human. You cannot defy me forever." Daniel did not flinch, his voice calm. "I already have." That night when they returned to the small house, Nira curled into Daniel's arms, whispering, "You didn't let him take us." Lior stood beside him, his face serious. "He will come back," he said, his voice filled with both fear and determination. Daniel nodded, looking into the fire. Then we will be ready, he said, his voice low but steady. And in that moment the children believed, not only in survival, but in something stronger. They believed in the man who stood for them, the man who had become more than a stranger. They believed in their father. The following days were tense. Whispers spread through the village like wildfire. Some said the human was foolish. Others said he was brave. Children peeked around corners to watch him. Elders shook their heads, and the stepfather grew restless. His pride wounded by the council's decision. He could not let the matter rest. His greed would not allow it. He wanted the land. He wanted control. And above all, he wanted to see Daniel humiliated. So he demanded a formal trial. One where every villager would watch, where the elders would make their judgment in front of all. The trial was set at the central square. Stone pillars rose on each side, and the great bell rang to summon everyone. The entire village gathered. Eyes sharp, whispers loud. Daniel walked forward with Lior and Nira close behind him, their small hands gripping his cloak. The stepfather stood across from him, dressed in fine robes he had borrowed to look respectable. His voice rang out as he spoke. These children are mine by right of blood. This human has stolen them. He deceives you with soft words. But when his strength fails, he will abandon them as I chose to do. His words dripped with venom, but some villagers nodded, remembering the curse of hunger. The head elder raised his staff, his voice deep. Let both sides speak, and let truth guide us. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes calm, his voice steady. I stole nothing, he said. I found 2 children left in the cold, hungry and alone. They were not protected, they were not cared for, they were abandoned, and I could not walk away. The stepfather laughed, a cruel sound. He plays the hero, but what does he gain? Why would a human risk himself for children not of his blood? Daniel looked at the crowd, his eyes shining with conviction. Because family is not only blood, it is action. It is sacrifice, it is staying when it is hardest to stay, he said. These children did not choose to be hungry. They did not choose to be left behind, but I choose them. I choose to protect them no matter the cost. The words stirred the crowd. Some frowned, others looked down, ashamed. A few even nodded slowly, but the stepfather would not surrender. Words mean nothing, he spat. Let us test action. If this human claims them, let him prove it. Let him feed them, clothe them, endure their hunger, and when he fails, the council will see the truth. The elder considered, then nodded. Very well. The trial shall not be of words alone. It shall be of days, 7 days, in which the human will provide for them without aid. If he fails, the children return to their blood. If he succeeds, they remain with him. The square erupted with murmurs, some cheering, others doubting. Lior's small hand trembled in Daniel's. Nira's wide eyes filled with fear. But Daniel only nodded, his voice quiet yet firm. I accept. The trial began at dawn the next day. Daniel set out into the forest with Lior at his side, teaching him how to set snares, how to track prints, how to listen for the rustle of beasts in the undergrowth. Nira stayed behind, tending the fire, trying her best to be helpful, though her hands were small and clumsy. The days were hard. Rain poured one night, soaking their clothes, lightning split the skies, hunger clawed at their stomachs. But Daniel did not falter. He hunted, he fished, he traded the little he had, and every night he placed food in the children's hands before touching his own. On the 4th day, Lior collapsed, his body too weak. Daniel carried him back on his shoulders, refusing to let him go hungry. On the 5th day, Nira cried from the cold. Daniel wrapped her in his own cloak, shivering through the night without warmth. The villagers watched from a distance, waiting for failure, waiting for Daniel to give up, but he never did. His face grew thin, his hands rough, yet his eyes remained steady. On the 7th day, the bell rang once more. The elders called the trial to an end. The children stood beside Daniel, their faces still pale but alive, their eyes shining with something more powerful than hunger. Trust, the stepfather shouted. This is a trick. He cannot endure forever. No one can. But his voice sounded weak, desperate. The elder raised his staff. 7 days, and the children. Live, not only live, but stand with strength, he declared. This human has done what their own blood refused. He has given them life. He has given them hope. The council sees this truth. The crowd stirred. Voices rose, some in awe, some in anger, but none could deny what they saw. Daniel placed a hand on Lior's shoulder. The boy stood taller than before, his chest filled with pride. Nira held Daniel's hand tightly, whispering, "We did it. We're still here." And Daniel, though weary, felt something new in his heart, something deeper than duty. He was not just protecting them anymore. He was becoming their father. The seventh day of the trial ended, but peace did not follow. The stepfather fumed with rage, his pride crushed before the village. He disappeared into the shadows, plotting, and while Daniel felt a moment of relief, he knew the man would return. The skies grew dark that evening, heavy clouds rolling in from the horizon. Thunder grumbled. In the distance, the air smelled of rain and fear. Villagers hurried to secure their homes, latching shutters, tying ropes, but Daniel had only a broken house and a weak fire. He gathered the children close, his eyes fixed on the storm. "It will pass," he said gently, though inside he worried. The wind howled, rain lashed down, water seeped through the cracks in the roof. Nira shivered, clinging to Daniel's arm. Lior tried to be strong, pressing his back against the door to keep it shut. But the storm was stronger. By midnight the river swelled, flooding the streets. Villagers shouted, their voices swallowed by thunder. Houses shook, roofs tore away. The storm was not just a test of weather. It was a test of survival. The stepfather appeared again, running through the rain, but not to save the children. He carried sacks of coins, bundles of food, anything he owned. His arms full of wealth while his neighbors drowned. He shouted at Daniel through the downpour, "Save yourself, human, leave them, or you will all die." Daniel's jaw tightened. He lifted Nira onto his shoulders, grabbed Lior's hand, and pushed through the rising water. "I will not leave them," he shouted back, his voice like iron against the storm. The floodwaters crashed into the village square, sweeping away carts and fences. Daniel fought through waist-deep currents, carrying the children one step at a time. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the terror in the villagers' faces as they clung to rooftops. "Help us!" someone cried. A mother trapped with her baby. "Save us!" shouted an elder clinging to a tree. Daniel turned, the children's eyes wide. "We can't save everyone," Lior said weakly, his voice breaking. But Daniel shook his head. "We save who we can," he answered. With Nira clinging to his back, Daniel waded to the mother first, lifting her child above the water, guiding them to higher ground, then to the elder, his muscles burning, his breath short. But he did not stop. Hour after hour he fought the storm, carrying, lifting, dragging. Each life pulled from the flood was another defiance of fate. The villagers who once mocked him now watched in disbelief, their voices shaking with awe. "The human does not give up," they whispered. "He carries us all." The stepfather stood on the edge, clutching his wealth, his eyes wide with envy and rage. "Fool," he spat. "You will drown with them." But his words were lost in the roar of the storm. At last Daniel stumbled onto the hillside beyond the flood. Dozens of villagers huddled behind him, saved by his strength. His body ached, his hands were raw, his lungs burned, but he was still standing. Lior leaned against him, exhausted but alive. Nira curled against his chest, whispering, "You carried us through the storm." The villagers gathered, their eyes filled with shame and gratitude. One elder spoke softly. "We called them cursed, yet it was you who saved us. It was you who saved them." For the first time, the children felt the stares of the village not as judgment, but as respect. Their stepfather, drenched and trembling, dropped his sacks of wealth. But no one cared. No one looked at him. All eyes were on the human who had stood against the storm, Daniel's voice was hoarse but strong. "A father does not choose when to protect his children," he said. "He protects them always, even when the sky itself tries to take them." The villagers bowed their heads, ashamed of their silence. The elders stepped forward, their robes soaked, their eyes heavy with realization. "Tonight we Saw truth, one declared. Blood abandoned them, but you, stranger, became their shelter, their shield, their strength. By law and by spirit, you are their father now. The crowd murmured in agreement. Some even cheered, others wept. The stepfather's face turned pale, his mouth opening to argue, but no words came. His power shattered. Daniel knelt, setting Nira down, pulling Leor close. He looked into their tear-stained faces. "You are safe," he whispered, his voice breaking for the first time. "As long as I live, you will never be alone again." And in the hearts of the children, the shadows of hunger and fear began to fade, replaced by something far stronger: hope. The storm passed, leaving silence heavier than thunder. The village lay in ruins, broken roofs, shattered fences, and streets turned to rivers of mud. But among the wreckage stood Daniel, the human who had carried children and villagers alike. Through the darkness, his shoulders bent with exhaustion, yet his eyes steady. Nira clung to his side, her small hand gripping his cloak. Leor stood tall beside him. Though his body trembled with weariness, their faces turned toward him with trust, so deep it could not be broken, for in their hearts they already knew. This man was not just a protector, he was something more. The villagers gathered slowly, eyes lowered in shame. For too long they had whispered curses, calling the children a burden. Too long they had turned away from their hunger and their tears. Yet when the flood came, it was the human who stayed, it was the human who carried them. The elders stood before the crowd, their voices solemn. "We have seen what blood has done, and we have seen what choice has done," one declared. "The stepfather abandoned, but the human endured from this day forward. These children are his, by law and by spirit." Gasps echoed, then silence. The stepfather staggered forward, his face pale, his eyes wide. "You cannot," he shouted, his voice cracking. "They are mine. Their land is mine." But the villagers no longer listened. They turned their backs on him, his power broken, his greed exposed. Daniel looked down at the children. Nira's eyes shimmered with tears. She whispered, "Does this mean we are yours?" Daniel knelt, pulling her close, drawing Leor into his arms too. His voice was soft, yet unshakable. "You were mine the moment I chose you." The words broke the last wall in their hearts. Nira sobbed into his chest. Leor's eyes filled with tears he no longer tried to hide. The crowd watched in silence, and for the first time they did not see cursed mouths. They saw a family, forged not by blood, but by courage. That night the villagers rebuilt together, but their eyes always drifted to Daniel's small fire on the hill, where the human sat with the children, feeding them, wrapping them in blankets, telling them stories until their eyes closed. Many whispered, "Perhaps he is not just a man. Perhaps he is what we should have been." As the days turned to weeks, life slowly returned. The flood receded. Crops were replanted. Houses mended. But something had changed. When Nira walked through the market, hands reached out to offer fruit. When Leor carried wood, villagers nodded in respect, no longer mocking, no longer turning away. One evening, Leor sat beside Daniel by the fire, his voice quiet. "You saved us from hunger, from the storm, from him," he said. "But why? You could have walked away." Daniel stared into the flames, the glow lighting his tired face. "Because someone once saved me when I was alone," he said, "and I promised I would never let another child feel what I felt." Leor's chest swelled, pride and love mixing in his heart. "Then I promise I will grow strong so I can protect Nira and you," he said firmly. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder, pride shining in his eyes. "And you will." Nira curled into Daniel's lap, her voice drowsy but clear. "Can I call you father now?" she asked. Daniel's throat tightened. He kissed the top of her head. "You already do," he whispered. The wind carried the words across the night, and in that simple moment the bond was sealed. Stronger than law, stronger than blood, Stepfather left the village in disgrace, carrying nothing but his bitterness. No one mourned his absence, no one followed him. His name faded into silence. While the human's name grew, Daniel became a story whispered around fires. The tale of a man who defied hunger, storm, and law to give 2 children a family. And so the children who were once cursed became blessed. Not because of magic, not because of fate, but because a man chose them, because a man carried them through every trial. Years later, when the children were grown, villagers still spoke of that night, of the storm that tried to break them, of the human who refused to let go, and whenever they told the story, they ended it the same way. He was not their blood, but he was their father. And in the hearts of Nira and Lior, that truth never changed, because Daniel was not just the man who saved them, he was the father beyond blood.